Alright, hello guys, and welcome to a build update on my favorite Stamina Templar build that I have ever played, guys, Ghost. So if you don't know, if this is your first time seeing this build, Ghost is a very high damage, high mobility, pretty high regen Stamina Templar build. It does a lot of damage, it has a lot of burst, and it's very mobile. So it's a very interesting way to play a Stamina Templar, very different from a traditional medium armor Stamina Templar build. There's lots of kiting in this build, lots of movement, and lots of really powerful burst gameplay. So let's jump right into it, guys. Let's get into this build update. Let's take a quick look at the stat sheets. As you guys can see here, my stats are not too shabby. We'll just buff up real fast for you here too. And then we'll use the my Essence of Weapon Crit as well, so we can see the buff stats here. We've got just about 24k health in PvP, not bad at all. Almost 34k maximum stamina. Keep in mind, I am wearing 6 medium, 1 heavy at the moment, so my max stat's a little bit lower than it would normally be. Ideally, you should run 5-1-1, but for this particular setup, I didn't have the helm on me. I accidentally deconned one of my slime craw pieces, so I have to run a 6-1, unfortunately. But anyway, we are coming in at 3,239 buffed weapon damage. Not bad at all. 41% buffed weapon crit, 45.9 on the bow. Of course, it goes up by a little bit. Our stamina recovery buffed is sitting at almost 2k stam recovery, 706 health recovery, 632 magicka recovery. So for this particular build right now, guys, we are running the Steed as our Mundus, so this is important. This is going to be a movement speed increase, which is a big deal for this build. It's very important that we run this Mundus passive for Ghost. And then finally, for the food we're using, we've got Dubious, Cameron, Throne. That being said, guys, this is a good option if you want to add a little bit more damage to this build, but if you feel like you're hurting for Magicka Sustain on this build, I would recommend going for the Orzorga Smoked Bear Haunch. Not only will that increase your Magicka Sustain, but it'll give you a little bit of health recovery too. I know that we are a stage 4 vampire on this build, so we take quite a bit of a cut to our health recovery. That being said, it is still not too shabby. You can see we're coming in at almost 600 health recovery as a stage 4 vampire, fully unbuffed on our health recovery. So if we did switch to our Zorgas, we could bring that health recovery amount over 1k, which is great for while you're in mist form. It's great for combat as well. It does actually help. So there you have it, guys. Let's move on to the gear. Let's see what we've changed up in the build, guys. So for the build, I've done a little bit of a gear swap. We've stuck with Automaton on the 2H bar. Automaton, of course, being the best in-slot damage choice for gear that you can choose for the Stamina Templar. I mean, there is no better in-slot damage option for a PvP Templar build than Automaton, in my opinion. It is the one that will bulk up your damage just all around. Templar has nothing but physical damage abilities through their own class kits, and the only way that they'll get poison damage abilities is through a few bow skills. So there you have it, guys. Very, very good set for a Stamina Templar. Absolutely love this this set here. And what we've done with the Ghost rebuild is I've replaced the Night Silence that I had in the previous Ghost build, which the way that it would work is we'd go into Sneak, which would increase our movement speed, and then we'd hit Mist to get the Speedy Mist. So instead what we've done is we've switched out that set for a 5-piece Jailbreaker. Now, Jailbreaker gives you Minor Expedition, which will increase your movement speed by 10% at all times. I know you can get Minor Expedition from the Vampire ability. In our vampire tree here, Drain Essence morph to Accelerating Drain. The only issue with that is that I'd have to give up a slot on my bar, and I would also be forced to stun someone in order to get that movement speed. So it doesn't really come in handy if you're just trying to run away from a larger group of players, as you might not get the opportunity to land a stun before you decide you have to get out of there. So there you have it. I decided to go with Jailbreaker for that reason. Now, I know Fjord's Legacy is a great option here too. The reason I didn't pick Fjord's, guys, is because we wanted that movement speed bonus for the Mist form. That's kind of the big deal about the Ghost build, is how fast can we get our character to move in that Mist form. So here we can see we get 10% bonus Mist form speed from Jailbreaker. Jailbreaker. We're going to get 5% bonus from our Mundus, and any piece of Divines that we have on will increase that by another 1%. So we've got 2 Divines on, so around 7% bonus movement speed from the Mundus, so 17% in total. And then finally, guys, we get a last 2% bonus movement speed from putting 120 points into the Lubber for Wind Running. But we'll get into the champion points in just a second. So there you have it, guys. That is how we're getting the 20% bonus movement speed on our bow bar, and that's going to be very helpful for our Mist form. So compared to the previous patch, we've lost out on about 13% movement speed on our Mist form, whereas we've gained 19 to 20% bonus movement speed on our regular sprint when we're running. So this build is very strong in regards to the fact that even if you're not in your Mist form, you're still very fast and very mobile thanks to this Minor Expedition buff and your Steed Mundus and Wind Running. So there we have it. That's how we're going to maintain the speed for this build. And as you can see, the Jailbreaker is also a great set because we get max stam, stam recovery, 2 times stamina recovery in the set. Very, very good 2, 3, 4 piece for this particular set. So we're going to be getting a lot of regen from running this set as well. And then finally, guys, the last 2 pieces we have is Slimecraw on. I have got the heavy shoulders and the medium helm. Ideally, I would do heavy shoulders and the light helm, or light shoulders, heavy helm. 1 heavy, 1 light to go with my 5 medium armor that I have here. Of course, all of this gear here is dropped in dungeons, so you will not be able to get this gear by crafting it or buying it. You have to go farm it in dungeons yourself, unfortunately. But that being said, when you get the right sets together, you can push that 35k max stam value on this build quite easily with a Nord. I'm sure on a Red Guard you could push 36, maybe even 37k on this build. So there you have it. Slimecraw, of course, is a great 2-piece helm set. This is going to be a flat damage increase. This goes very nicely with our Automaton set on the Greatsword. Between these 2 sets, we bulk up our damage on our Templar by quite a lot, giving us very beefy, powerful tooltips on our abilities. And then finally, guys, for the enchants on the rings and necklaces, we went with all weapon damage. We want to buff up that damage as far as we can. And then finally, for the gear, I would recommend all stamina enchants for you guys. If you want, you can do some tri-stat enchants. They come in handy, bulking up your max health and, of course, giving you a little bit more max magicka to play with that Mist form. But that being said, I think stamina is the best bet to go, as that's what's going to give you the best outgoing damage on this build, and that is ultimately what you want to go for. For the traits on the build, guys, I would recommend a 50-50 split of well-fitted and impenetrable if you can get it. If you don't have access to a bunch of well-fitted and impen, you can see I have 2 well-fitted here. Or, sorry, I have 1 well-fitted and 3 impenetrable. Divines is always a good option too. Divines, of course, is going to increase your movement speed by a little bit. And then finally, guys, for the Greatsword, I would recommend the Sharpen trait. And for the bow, interestingly enough, we've gone with the Defending trait for this build. And the reason I've gone with the Defending trait for this build on the bow is because we're running different type of poison for this build. So as you can see, we've given up the Infused on the bow for the weapon damage buff, and instead we've gone in favor of a vulnerability poison on both our bow and Greatsword. So we get to maintain the Sharpen bonus on the Greatsword, which is great. On the bow, we get the Defending bonus, which is really awesome because we're going to get that bonus whenever we're in Mist form. This is essentially going to make our Mist form much tankier than it would normally be. If we look at my buffed up stats when I throw my circle down, I'm sitting at almost 23k physical resist and 25.4k spell resist, and 1600 crit resist. So not bad at all. We've got pretty good defensive stats for medium armor when we switch to that bow because it's defending. The vulnerability poisons are great because they will finally inflict your opponent with minor vulnerability, which will increase the damage they take by another 8%. So the way that this works is we've got a lot of different sets and a lot of different debuffs like the poisons here, which are going to allow us to deal a lot of burst damage with the abilities that we time coming out of this build. So if you do your bow heavy attack and you weapon swap into the crit rush, light attack, executioner, bash, if you proc a vulnerability poison, that entire combo will deal 8% additional damage. So all I'm saying here is proc builds move over, vulnerability is where it's at. Okay guys, so let's take a look at those skills. We're going to start, of course, on the Greatsword bar. I'm just going to swap out a few abilities here. So let's take a quick peek. No skill changes for the build, guys. We've got Executioner, Critical Rush, Repentance, Rally, and Binding Javelin. Finally, Flawless Dawnbreaker. Executioners execute. This is our gap closer. Repentance, of course, is going to be a very powerful heal / resource sustain move. We've got Rally, that's going to be our heal, heal over time, and our burst heal, as well as giving us Major Brutality. Binding Javelin for that stun, and then, of course, Flawless Dawnbreaker for the ultimate. While slotted, this is going to increase our weapon damage by 5%, giving us the beefiest defensive bonus that we can on this greatsword. So let's compare this, the damage on this build compared to Old Ghost. We're sitting at a 7.4k tooltip on our critical rush with the dubious Cameron Throne. The Old Ghost build was sitting at around a 7.1 to 7.2k tooltip on their crit rush. So the way we have set up with the dubious here, I'm hitting a little bit harder. If we switch back to our Zorgas in favor of health regen and sustain, our tooltip would go down by around 300 to 400. So the damage on this build would be slightly lower than the previous Ghost installment if you were to run the Orzorgas, but it's slightly higher if you run Dubious at the cost of a little bit Magicka Sustain. So it's really up to you what you want to run for food on this, guys, but ultimately that's what's going to make the difference in your outgoing damage for this build. Let's take a look at that defending bow bar. So the bow bar hasn't changed either from the previous Ghost installments. We've got Poison Injection as our first ability here, Power of the Light as the second, Elusive Mist as our mobility agent, Poison Injection, of course, that deadly damage over time. Mix that in with Power of the Light. These are your two primary dots. If you need to dot a target up, you're going to do your Light Attack, Power of the Light Attack, Poison Injection to dot them up real quick. Elusive Mist is your primary mobility skill. It's quite expensive. We, of course, are running Channeled Focus to give us the armor buff, and, of course, a little bit of Magicka back to help keep that mist uptime going. And then, finally, the last ability we have is Extended Ritual. As always, Templar's most powerful purge, removing 5 harmful negative effects, and, of course, an ally can synergize, removing negative effects for themselves as well. And then, of course, guys, we've got the Bow Ultimate here, morphed to the Ballista is the best morph, I think, for this build. The Ballista is great because it allows you to put an incredible amount of single target pressure on top of your already incredibly high single target burst on a single guy. This is almost a guaranteed kill. If you drop the Ballista and then stun your target and crit rush into them, they will most likely not survive that combination unless they are quite tanky. So there you have it, guys. There is the skills. Not much has changed here. Of course, we're running the same old pots. Restore max health, restore stamina, and major savagery for that weapon critical. Alright, guys, let's take a look at the champion system. Of course, this is for the Morrowind update, so we're going to be taking a look at the updated champion system for you guys. So let's start in the green tree. Let's see what they changed here. So something that we're going to start off by saying, a lot of the champion values for the upcoming Morrowind patch have been adjusted. So things that reduce your cost, etc., by certain percentages have been adjusted a lot. So things like Bashing Focus and Sprinter, you see at 9 points in, I'm getting a 6% cost reduction. These goes up to about 40%, I believe. So they go up by quite a bit. You get a lot more for some more unattractive passives in the past than you used to. So let's go through them. We've got 17 in Warlord, reduce the cost to break free, definitely going to help. We've got 9 in Sprinter, 9 in Bashing Focus to reduce the cost of bashing and sprinting. No important passives here. In the Lover Tree, we've got 75 in Mooncalf. Now, if I put the next 25 points in this Mooncalf, it would bring me to 15% bonus stamina recovery. So you can see the diminishing return as you begin to dump too many points into something gets, pretty bad. You almost don't want to put more than around 70 points into something because then you're just getting terrible returns on it, unless it's a passive that's really worth putting into. So as you can see here, I put 75 points in the Mooncalf. That's as far as I'm going to put into the Mooncalf there. A lot of recovery coming out of it for putting those points in, 14% bonus to my stamina recovery. Now let's compare it to Arcanist. We've got a 4.2% bonus to my Magicka recovery from 15 points. 15 points gives me about a third of the recovery as these 75 do here. So there you can really see that change in the champion point values and how much they affect. Those first few points you put in now are going to be worth a lot. When you put around 30 to 40 points in, you're going to be getting half of the passive out of that, half of the available passive, or half of whatever that percentage could potentially be. So there you have it. We've got 20 in health recovery. Of course, I said that we're running Orzorga's Smoke Bear Haunch if you wanted for the extra sustain, so this would be very good. If you use the Orzorgas, I'd recommend putting even a few more points in here. And then, of course, we do have the Steed Mundus increasing our health recovery as well, and we're a Nord, so that's just a little bit on top there, too. We've got 10 into Tenacity to increase the Magicka and Stamina. Your fully charged heavy attacks restore by 2.9%. Not really a super important passive here. Definitely the recoveries are the better ones in this tree. And there we have it. The important passive we get from here is Synergizer. restore a little bit of ultimate when we use those synergies. And of course, we've got 120 points in this tree, giving us wind running, increasing that maximum movement speed by 2%. And this is for all movement speeds. This is for when you're moving normally, if you're on your horse, doesn't matter. All movement speeds increased by 2%. And this is also going to give you a bonus to your health and magicka recovery while you sprint. So a little bit of an interesting fun fact. And that's something that they've added that's actually new to this passive for the Morrowind changes. So there you go. So let's move on. We've got the Shadow coming up next, guys. We have got 50 in Tumbling and 5 in Shadow Ward. 50 in Tumbling here, reduce the cost of roll dodge by 18.75%. Huge roll cost reduction. We only threw 50 points in here as well, but we do get huge returns off of those first 50 points, so there you have it. Big roll cost reduction right here. If we were to put the next 50 points in, we'd probably only go up to around 25% roll cost reduction. So 50 points there is going to ensure that we get a majority of the cost reduction right there. And then just a little bit in Shadow Ward to reduce the cost of block because, of course, you will be blocking in PvP. Okay, so let's check out that blue tree, guys. So the blue tree has been changed up a lot, too. There's been a lot of changes here that favor different kinds of damage builds, kind of changing how you set up your damage build, not even for just stam builds, but for magicka builds and hybrids as well. So quite a few CP changes made here. So in the apprentice tree, we've got 10 in blessed for the 2.9% additional healing. Not bad at all. Need that little bit of that bonus healing. In the Atronach tree, we've got 40 in Master of Arms and 40 in Physical Weapon Expert. So, this has been changed. Physical Weapon Expert now encompasses all melee weapons and bows as well. So, any melee or any weapon that is a stamina-based weapon will now benefit from Physical Weapons Expert, whereas any staff will benefit from the Staff Expert. So, 22.43% bonus damage to our bow and greatsword light and heavy attacks. So this is kind of a buff from the previous Ghost patch, as we'd have to split our points between these two, and we wouldn't be able to get a bonus this high if we split our points between them anyway. So not only do we get the added bonus of them both being in the same passive, but this passive scales higher than it used to. So your light and heavy attacks are going to be much more effective than they used to be, especially with this coming Morrowind patch. In Master of Arms, we've got a 16.02% increased damage to all attacks that deal direct damage. So this is any attack that is not a damage over time attack, that is not an AoE, any attack that is single target and deals direct damage to the target in front of you will get this 16% damage bonus. So very powerful passive added here. Something to keep in mind that's quite unique about this passive is it just encompasses direct single target attacks. So it doesn't matter if they're magicka or stamina, they are going to get the bonus from this ability. So this is pretty cool because this opens up a new kind of champion buildcraft route for hybrids. Hybrids in the past have had a really tough time building with the champion tree. If anything, the old champion system made it harder to put together hybrids, so this is an interesting passive change for that reason. And then, of course, guys, the important passive we have here is Butcher. 5% bonus damage to enemies below 25% health with your light and heavy attacks. Not really, like, crazy important, but it does come in handy, especially if you're doing DPS to a boss, trying to take down a tankier target, etc. The bonus damage always piles up, so it does not hurt to have this passive here. In the next tree, guys, we've got 120 points in here in the ritual. Let's start with Mighty. We only have 60 in Mighty. Now, normally in the past, you'd see my builds running 80 or higher in for almost all my builds that would run, especially Ghost, we'd have 80 or higher in Mighty. So here we've dropped it to 60. As I've said, the way the champion points have been changed, it's almost detrimental to stack too much into one single star. You're a lot better off finding out all the things that your build does and then stacking all over the place, just because you'll get a more powerful aggregate bonus from stacking everything that your build does together than opposed to just stacking Mighty. So I've decided to drop quite a few points in Mighty. We've stuck with 60 here to maintain a sizable chunk of that maximum 15% bonus. We're at 12.5%. I've dumped 30 points into Piercing for 2.6, almost 2.7k physical penetration. Massive amount of physical penetration for dumping the points in Piercing here. Holy man. And then we've got 25 points in Precise for almost 11% bonus damage to our critical strikes. And if I am correct, this has remained unchanged from previous installments, so there you have it. The only thing that's been changed about Precise Strikes is how it scales, so it should only scale up to around 25%, I believe. And then finally, guys, we've got 5 in Thaumaturge, just to increase a little bit of damage with our dots. We've got Poison Injection, and then, of course, Power of the Light and Flawless Dawnbreaker. All of these can deal a little bit of dot damage, so we are going to have Thaum for that reason. The important passive that we get from this tree is Perfect Strike for that 12% weapon crit, very important. And then finally, Last Stand. When you fall below 20% health gain, Major Heroism, granting 3 ultimate every 1.5 seconds for 8 seconds. This is a really good passive, especially for PvP if you're playing in any kind of an outnumbered situation. Last Stand's an awesome passive. It's just going to make it easier for you to fight outnumbered. Even if you're not outnumbered, it doesn't even matter. It's just a good passive. Whenever you're taking too much pressure, having a bit of ult coming back so you can pop your ult sooner is not a bad thing. So it's a very good passive there. Okay, so let's take a look at that red tree. We have got quite a balanced red tree. Like I said, guys, in this patch, it's a lot more beneficial to really spread your points out than it is to dump them heavily into one kind of star. So let's check out this steed to begin. We got 18 medium armor focus. This is going to buff up our physical resistance for wearing 5 or more medium. We've got 18 spell shield, buff up our spell resistance. So we see we get a 1729 bonus to both our physical and spell resist, so not bad at all. And then we've got resistant. Increase your critical resistance by 700 for the 24 points here. So that's just playing in with the impen, giving us our around 1600 resistance or critical resist. In our Lady Tree, we've got 35 in Hardy and 35 in Elemental Defender, 5 in Thick Skin. Of course, we are a Templar. We have lots of purges. Don't need to worry too much about damage over time. Hardy and Elemental Defender, we put quite a few points in here, as these are really good defensive passives here. Just any physical poison or disease damage will be reduced, whereas any flame, frost, shock, or magic damage will be reduced. These are very open. These are very open passives because they will reduce incoming damage from all attacks. Pretty much any physical or any magical attack will take flat reduction from this passive. So it's very, very strong in that sense. So we've invested more heavily into these two than our other defensive passives for our build. And then finally, guys, we have got 60 in quick recovery. As you can see with my champion point tree, I'm very hesitant to put more than 60 points into a tree unless I really need whatever that tree's giving me. And then finally, 15 in expert defender, sorry. So 10% less damage from light and heavy attacks, and then of course increase our healing by 12.5%. So there you guys have it. That is the Ghost rebuild for the upcoming Morrowind patch. I really hope you guys like this. There will not be any gameplay footage with this build. If you guys want to see some videos of this build in action, feel free to check out any videos that are labeled Ghost on my YouTube channel. It is the same build. I've just rebuilt it across many patches so you can see what it looks like to play. And as always, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you so much for watching.